Hi guys, I fear that Boris Johnson, the man-child, may attempt to use the issue of the Northern Ireland Protocol to bring down Rishi Sunak's government. Not because he cares about Northern Ireland, but because he feels cheated by the current Prime Minister. Remember, it was Sunak along with Sajid Javid who were the first high-profile members of his cabinet to resign and bring about the end of the Johnson regime. And I don't think the former Prime Minister and his supporters have forgiven Rishi for that. However, at the same time, I'm not sure Johnson actually wants his old job back, but just wants to cause trouble. Here Tim Shipman, the Sunday Times chief political commentator, describes an incident where Boris Johnson had some harsh words for the Americans.
Boris Johnson, as we know, is causing mayhem behind the scenes as usual. Brexit's starring role is still standing in the wings, sort of waving, look over here, look over here.
Look at me.
Look at me. And we're told he was in the chamber during the debate marking the first anniversary of Ukraine. And Robert Buckland, who is his former cabinet colleague, who is his Lord Chancellor, and I think takes a fairly dim view of some of the excesses of Boris Johnson's Brexit policy. Johnson is pushing for this Brexit bill to be pursued, and Buckland wasn't getting anywhere with him. So he tried talking to him about, well, look, we need this for, good relations with the EU and the Americans. And Boris Johnson was overheard replying, "Screw the Americans," except the word "screw" began with an F. And Boris Johnson's team are not denying that was said. They're saying it was a jocular conversation which has been misunderstood by somebody. Not quite sure how you misunderstand quite what he said there, but as we know, he has form for saying F various things.
Yeah, business. Yeah, we remember
famously.
that well.
And then the other intriguing thing is that this whole business of the bill that he's pushing, which he says would be great leverage for Rishi Sunak. I mean, the government say if we push this bill through, we'd have turmoil in the House of Lords because there were 92 amendments against it. It wouldn't even go through. And if we tried it, the EU would stop talking to us about things like small boats, which we're also trying to solve. That's one thing politically. But Johnson says, this is a great legal cudgel that we can wave at them. I've got hold of the legal advice that Boris Johnson was given in 2019, which effectively says that this bill is barely worth the paper it's written on and that it could only possibly be a temporary solution. And if the EU took us to court, we'd still have to pay them reparations, even while we were in arbitration. And then to cap it all, at the end of it, we would have an international law obligation to adhere to the rulings of the European Court of Justice, which is precisely the thing that the Brexiteers claim that this bill would avoid.
My God. So the Brexiteers are saying, okay, we need to have this bill in order to use as a tool against the European Union so that they don't implement EU law in Northern Ireland. And as I said before, that EU law in Northern Ireland is necessary for businesses to operate, and EU law in Northern Ireland allows businesses to operate in the way that is in a privileged position in respect to the Republic of Ireland or Great Britain. But the Brexiteers, once again here, along with Boris Johnson, either not understanding how the EU works, understanding Brexit itself and the Northern Ireland Protocol, or just simply not caring. Now, when it comes to Boris Johnson, I think it's simply not caring. We saw it before when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. How many times did he say he was willing to trigger Article 16? Remember Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol? And I've said before, Article 16 is not some big red button you press and there's an explosion somewhere else in Northern Ireland, thankfully. Article 16 stops a particular part of the process of the protocol, goods or something, for a temporary period of time. It brings together the joint committee of the UK, representatives from the UK government, from the EU, to resolve the problem. But the rest of the process continues. The rest of the implementation of the protocol continues. But it was presented as a sort of nuclear option in UK media, and politicians would say, yeah, we need to trigger Article 16 to stop these problems. And Boris Johnson was happy to peddle that lie, that it would resolve all problems. It was a panacea. And now he's once again peddling the lie that the Northern Ireland Protocol bill, as you saw here, not worth the paper it's written on. And that's not a journalist talking, that's not me talking, that's Boris Johnson's own legal advice back in 2019. is being used once again as a tool to threaten the European Union, like Article 16. Now, do these threats work? Of course they don't. I've said before, the EU is like a ministry. It's like a government department. It's like the civil service. It doesn't respond to threats like this. It implements legislation. It's like, as I said, a ministry. It doesn't have feelings. As a representative of the European Union said many years ago, we're not like people. The EU is not like people. It doesn't have feelings. It creates laws. It implements those laws. If there are problems, it tries to work around them. It tries to implement the laws in the most efficient way possible. And as I said before, when it comes to the Northern Ireland Protocol, the EU was willing to listen to businesses in Northern Ireland. But this is Boris Johnson grandstanding. This is Boris Johnson probably trying to remain relevant because he's realised that he can make a lot of money talking to people who are happy to give him money. I don't know what the hell they want to hear from Boris Johnson, but they're happy to give him huge amounts of money. And in order to continue that flow, continue that grift, he needs to keep talking. He needs to remain relevant. And I think this is about Boris Johnson. It's not about Northern Ireland. It's not about the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. It's not about Brexit. It's about Boris Johnson. Always was and always will be. And I'm pretty sure Rishi Sunak understands that. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.